Hey everyone, Jonathan Bailor back. I'm smiling from ear to ear for today's show because we have an author, a researcher, a professor, an influencer, a woman who has touched me personally with her brilliant book, very influential work. Her book is called Mindset. Her website is Mindset Online, and her research and her work focuses on why people succeed and how to foster success and how we can take that and help ourselves be more successful. Professor Carol S. Dweck, welcome to the show.
It's a pleasure to be here, Jonathan.
Well, Carol, before we get into your brilliant research and your wonderful book, which is sitting on my bookshelf, it's called Mindset. I'm a big fan. I think it's incredibly empowering, and it's so scientific, which makes it even better because it's not the secret, it's science. And how did you get involved in this? Because you've had quite the career.
I got involved in this work when I was still in graduate school. I wondered why some people were crushed by setbacks, wilted in the face of failure, whereas other people seem to cope really well. And when I undertook this research, I found that some people not only coped well, they thrived on setbacks. Their juices got flowing. They thought, now this is worth my while. I can really learn something. I felt I had a lot to learn from these people. I vowed to learn their secret and to bottle it.
Well, Carol, this is why I wanted to have you on the show, because if it wasn't for those three little letters after your name, PhD, and the fact that you are the Lewis and Virginia Eaton Professor of Psychology at Stanford University, and many published works, people could hear what you just said and think you're one of these woo-woo people. But you are the furthest from that, correct?
I'm completely not a woo-woo person. I have 40 years of research to back up what I'm saying.
So Carol, you said we could bottle this, and you're not woo-woo. So what's going on here? How do we do this?
Well, after many years of research, we discovered that there are certain beliefs that create these different patterns of coping with setbacks. Some people have what I call a fixed mindset. They believe their abilities and personal qualities are just fixed traits. You have a certain amount and that's it. So you have a certain athletic ability, you may have a certain intelligence, a certain personality, but these aren't things that you can change. And we find that when people have a fixed mindset in a certain area, they don't want challenges because a mistake would mean they're not who they want to be. They don't like setbacks. They flee from them because they see these setbacks as measuring these permanent, important qualities. But other people have a growth mindset. They believe the most fundamental qualities we have can be developed over time through dedication, passion, help from others, good strategies. And these are the people who love challenges, who thrive in the face of obstacles. This is part of learning. When it's easy, they feel it's boring and a waste of time. When it's hard, it really gets their juices flowing.
Carol, I think there's a surface level of brilliance with what you just said, which is many people get and love, and that's why your work has been so successful. But I think there's a level deeper, and maybe it's not that much deeper, but it struck me when what you just said, and when I was reading your book, of this difference between the fixed mindset and the growth mindset, where the fixed mindset, on the surface, someone might say, okay, you have a fixed mindset, you believe everything's fixed, therefore you have no motivation to try anything. I get that. But another way to look at that is, and I think this is actually even more profound, is if you have a fixed mindset, you don't try anything because you're so afraid. Because if you fail at it, you're like, there's no chance. Like, I'm a failure because I can't develop that. So the fixed mindset, it is the ultimate demotivator. Is that correct?
Yes, because everything measures you. Therefore, everything holds the danger of saying, you're not as smart as you want to be, or you're not the person you want to be.
And that's such a key thing, Carol. And it seems like the more and more research that's done, the more it shows that this resiliency, this ability to not personalize these things and just say, like, this is indicative of who I am and there's nothing I can do to change it, is so critical for our ability to get on with and thrive in our lives.
Exactly. And one thing I want to point out is that people can have different mindsets in different areas. You can think your intelligence is fixed, but your athletic skills can be developed, or vice versa. But it's the mindset you have in a given area that's going to be very powerful in that area.
Now, Carol, and actually for this segment, I'm going to call you Professor Dweck because I want to channel your professorial nature here. So, Professor Dweck, I could imagine maybe if a listener is multitasking right now and isn't fully paying attention to what you're saying, they may think to themselves, and please don't let this offend you because I do not mean it. I'm satirizing this thought. I do not agree with this thought. You could imagine someone saying, "Oh, this sounds a lot like that book, The Secret, where if I just think something or have a positive mindset, magic happens." And again, that's not at all what we're saying, Professor Dweck, correct?
Correct. It's not about just thinking positively. It's about believing that your fundamental qualities can be developed and then taking steps to do that. Taking on difficult intellectual tasks, taking on difficult personal tasks, taking on difficult problems in your relationships and trying to make those better. So it's really about action, agency, persistence, perseverance. It's not about wishing and hoping.
Dr. Dweck, that is so wonderful, and I'm gonna give two thumbs up to that, and I'm gonna give a kind of a silly example. There was this episode of the television show South Park where there are these underwear gnomes, and these gnomes, they go into one of the characters' bedrooms. They just steal their underwear. It's like, when you have your socks that just get lost, and you're like, where the heck did that sock go? Like, I don't leave my socks at work. So the joke was that there are these underwear gnomes and sock gnomes that steal your underwear and socks, and eventually the kids from South Park, they find these underwear gnomes, and they go to the underwear gnomes and they say, "Underwear gnomes, why are you stealing our underwear?" And the underwear gnomes unveil this brilliant business plan. And the business plan is 3 steps. Step 1 is collect underpants. Step 2 is question mark. And step 3 is profit. And of course, the joke is, well, that step 2 is pretty daggone important.
Yes.
And the key thing that I heard you just said is this is an oversimplification, but there's 3 sets. There's 3 steps. There's the appropriate mindset is step 1. Step 2 is doing something, taking.
Exactly. In a fixed mindset, people hope and wish or believe that something will happen because they're smart or they're a good person, but they aren't making it happen. They aren't taking the steps to bring the goal about.
And so, Carol, we've got the fixed mindset, we've got the growth mindset. How has this been applied in different areas of life? I know when we were talking before the call, you mentioned that there's been some research in terms of health specifically where this mindset work has been applied. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yes, I will. But first, I will tell you that we've done studies in which we have changed students' mindsets and they earn higher grades.
Wow.
And they stay in school longer. Peter Heslin, a researcher, has done studies where he's changed business managers' mindsets and they become more open to feedback and better mentors. So I really want to emphasize that these mindsets are not only powerful, but they can be changed. Recently, we took the mindsets with Claudia Mueller. We took the mindsets into the area of health. And we were really interested in adolescent health. The first thing to tell you is that in some high schools, the great majority of students had a fixed mindset about health. They thought, oh, you're given a certain health, it comes in your genes, And what you do doesn't really matter. What you eat, how you behave, whether you exercise. So that was an eye-opener, that so many adolescents don't really understand that what you do affects your health. Then we studied teenage diabetics at the Stanford Hospital, at the Stanford Children's Hospital. And we found that the ones who had a growth mindset were the ones who were managing their blood sugar much more effectively. They kept it within a range, and they kept it low. They kept it normal. Whereas those with the fixed mindset who didn't really, I have this disease, but weren't really taking seriously the impact that they could have on the course of that disease, were much more likely to let it vary and much more likely to have a very high score out of the range in each period.
Carol, when you were describing these experiments and just the phrasing you used, and I remember noting this in the margin of your book Mindset when I was reading it, was parallels with Dr. Seligman's work of learned helplessness. And have you drawn parallels between the growth mindset or the fixed mindset and a state of learned helplessness?
Absolutely. In fact, my earliest work was on learned helplessness. Where people give up in the face of difficulty because they don't think there's anything they can do about it. And then after working on that for a long time, I discovered that the fixed mindset was at the heart of learned helplessness. That if you confront challenges or face obstacles that are difficult for you, you don't think you can do anything about that.
And Carol, is this, because I'm getting back to the point you made earlier, which I really want to drill into because I think it's very powerful, is how we can change our mindset. And when people hear that, hopefully the optimist in us says, oh, like I can change my mindset in a good way. But with learned helplessness, it seems like what's happening, and again, I'm hypothesizing here, please correct me if I'm wrong, is in some cases you could take someone who maybe has a growth mindset. Let's say I have a growth mindset where if I just starve myself and exercise for 2 hours a day, I can change my body. And I do that, and I feel terrible, and I end up being heavier and sicker than I ever was before. So I end up feeling a sense of learned helplessness, and I end up getting a fixed mindset saying that no matter how hard I try, there's nothing I can do.
Yes. But, a good form of a growth mindset, and one that most people with a growth mindset have, is the idea that difficult goals are ones that you reach slowly and with effort over a long period of time. So there's new work by Jenny Burnett and her colleagues on how the mindsets affect adherence to diets. And what she found was that if someone had a growth mindset about dieting and weight, something that you can affect and increase your abilities over time, she found that if someone had a growth mindset about dieting, they weren't so thrown off when they had inevitable dieting setbacks. Whereas those with a fixed mindset thought, well, it's destined or it's not destined. and when they had a setback, it really threw them off course.
Well, and Carol, so what it seems like there are these mindsets, and that in many contexts, and I'm actually curious if there is any context which is untrue, the growth mindset is more beneficial. So what do we do if we have areas in our lives where we have that fixed mindset? How can we change our mindset?
Well, the first thing I tell people is listen to that fixed mindset voice in your head. It's there, and you have to just listen to how it talks to you. It says, oh, don't take on this hard task. You might fail. And then people will see you're not as smart or as good or competent as you want to be. Or if you make a mistake, it says, see, you're no good at this. You better give up while you're still ahead of the game. When you see other people who are thin or in good relationships or talented and successful, your fixed mindset voice might say, you see, those are the real winners. You're not like them. So just listen to that voice. It's there, and it is undermining. It also prevents you from taking on the challenges and pursuing the goals that you're capable of reaching. The second thing, start talking back to it.
I love it. I love it.
Start talking back to it with a fixed mindset voice growth mindset voice. The growth mindset voice says, if you don't try something, you're never going to get anywhere. Mistakes, those are a natural part of learning. The people you admire, they got there through hard work. And research shows that's how people become incredibly successful, not just through talent, but mostly through hard work and perseverance and learning. The third step, once you're talking back, is to realize you have a choice. You can follow the dictates of the fixed mindset and become essentially a couch potato who doesn't take risks. Or you can listen to the growth mindset voice. Start taking on challenges. Keep at them. And you'll see how the learning takes place and how the success follows from that. Now, it's not an immediate thing. It's not magic. It doesn't happen overnight. And often, even if you're listening to the growth mindset, you'll have a setback. And then that fixed mindset voice will kick in. You see, I told you so. You shouldn't take that risk. So still, no matter how icky you're feeling, keep following that growth mindset voice.
Carol, I so appreciate you sharing this with us, because taking us through this step-by-step approach, the thing that I really want to highlight and lift up for our listeners is on some level, we might feel like we already know this. And in some ways we're like, I got this. Like this makes common sense. And I think it does. And that's why I think it's brilliant. But at the same time, Carol, there's so much stuff on the internet in terms of self-help this, woo-woo that, nutrition this, diet that. And, one thing I tried to do in my work was to say, that's fine. Let's actually dig in. Let's look at the science. And what came out the other end ended up being totally common sense. It was eat more nutritious food and eat so much nutritious food that you're too full for not nutritious food. And like, okay, oh, great. You spent 10 years of your life coming to that conclusion. Good job, Jonathan. But that's when you have that deep scientific underpinning. I think that is so important, because so many people are out there telling us it's this secret or this trick or this technique. But what we're talking about here, although it sounds simple, it is simple, but it is predicated on rigorous science. Can you tell us a bit about the actual scientific process that went into developing these mindsets?
Oh, let me say one thing first, and then I'd love to go into that. It is common sense that if you try hard and persevere, you'll go farther than if you don't. But in a fixed mindset, it doesn't feel that way. They say hard tasks. People in a fixed mindset believe that hard tasks are threatening. They don't like effort. They feel that if you had high ability, you wouldn't really need effort. And they run from setbacks to try to save face. So even though taking on challenges, putting out effort, persevering, it just seems like common sense, in the fixed mindset, it is not appealing. And also, common sense often is a poor guide. For example, how many people think praising someone's intelligence is good for them?
I would say most.
And yet we have over a dozen studies showing it's harmful. Praising intelligence and talent puts someone into a fixed mindset with all of its liabilities. They don't want to challenge, they don't want to work hard, and they are thrown off by setbacks. Whereas praising the process they engaged in, or how they improved, or the strategies they used, or the focus, or the persistence, those are the things that create a growth mindset and keep people going for challenges and persisting. So common sense is not always the best guide.
Carol, I gotta say something here, because I'm like standing up right now, because what you just said have so many parallels to what we talk about on this show often. Let me give you a concrete example. So you just talked about praising someone like, oh, you're smart. So you find someone and they lost 100 pounds. You're just like, oh my God, like you lost 100 pounds. That's so good. But in reality, we don't know. Like maybe they took a bunch of cocaine to like lose 100 pounds. We don't know. But we're so quick to say, person who did X, like you're good. But what we should really be praising maybe is that person who is going out of their way to eat more non-starchy vegetables. That person who's taking steps to move more and who's doing that consistently. They're not necessarily going to win the Biggest Loser. But they, through that process, through that continuous, gradual, dedicated change, it seems like that's the person who's more set up for long-term success.
Exactly. And you would be praising the process of the foods that they choose and the adherence they're showing to this new regimen. That's why we don't say the person is good or bad. We focus on the process, whether to praise it or critique it and improve it. Exactly. And, when you're talking about health and weight, it's a lifelong commitment. It's not a quick fix. So we must focus on the process. And when someone has a failure on a diet or an exercise regime, it's part of the process. You learn from that. Why did this happen to me now? And how can I prevent it in the future? Everything is part of this learning process.
Carol, that focus on process is so profound. And you just said it in words that I've never actually said before, but I've in large part tried to dedicate my life to helping people understand that, for example, these things like these 7-day cleanses and taking these pills, like if you want the result to continue, the process is what matters. Like you have to find that process, and that most people call it lifestyle change, but most people don't understand what the heck that actually means. When we say lifestyle change, what we actually mean, maybe to use your words, is find a process that you can actually do for the rest of your life.
Yes.
And that's what we mean. We don't, unless you plan on taking this pharmaceutical for the rest of your life, or unless you plan on cleansing for the rest of your life, that's probably not the optimal process for you to be engaging in.
Yes, exactly.
Well, Carol, so we were talking earlier a bit about steps we can take to help change our mindset. What are some of those steps?
Well, I talked about listening to the fixed mindset voice and talking back and obeying the growth mindset voice.
Absolutely.
We can also just notice. I think this is really important. Notice that when you put in more effort, or when you learn from your mistakes, things go better. Notice the progress you make when, instead of beating yourself up or running from mistakes or making excuses, you focus on them and learn from them. In Silicon Valley, there's a saying, fail early, fail often in order to succeed sooner. And it's the idea that you learn even more from what doesn't work for you. And that takes you on the path of finding what does work for you.
And again, Carol, that sounds like that's really embracing that process, because once, for a lot of the listeners, for myself, and for many people I get the chance to work with, in some ways it's very easy to lament these approaches we may have taken in the past that have failed, but in another way we can celebrate them, because now we are liberated from them, because we know from experience that they don't work.
Yes.
And they know, hopefully if we have the growth mindset, that we can do something different and we can improve in the future.
Exactly. You don't say, oh, I'm a weak person, I'm a bad person. It's like, why did that happen, and what can I do in the future that would be better or more fruitful?
Well, Carol, I'm curious, because so often let's focus on body fat here for a second. So often in our country, individuals who are carrying around excess body fat, what do other people say to those people? You are lazy. You are a glutton, and we don't necessarily recognize that there might be something deeper going on, and we don't look at that. We force upon these people in some ways a fixed mindset. That doesn't seem like that's helping anything.
Not at all. You're saying you have these traits that make you how you are, and instead, I don't know that we should go around giving advice to people on weight loss unsolicited, but instead, again, they need to understand that there are ways of eating and living that don't involve constant deprivation that could work for them and help them become healthier.
I love it, Carol. I love it. Well, what's next? This work has already permeated so many aspects of our culture. Where are you taking it next?
And we're taking it in so many different directions. We are working on bullying and aggression, and showing that teaching a growth mindset, the idea that we don't all have fixed traits, is actually lowering the level of retaliation and aggression in high schools. When you have a fixed mindset, you think, oh, that's a bad person who picked on me and I hate them, but they make me feel like a loser and I hate myself. And it just kind of escalates until the kids in our studies say they want violent revenge. But when you think, hey, you're a struggling person who's, doing the best you can, and I'm a struggling person doing the best I can, and we're all capable of change. It's a much more benign way of seeing the world. We have a whole line of research now on peace in the Middle East. And we've shown that teaching Arabs or Israelis the idea that groups don't have a fixed nature. Groups are capable of change, makes them more positive towards each other and more willing to entertain compromises for the sake of peace. So we're looking at that. We're also doing interventions on online courses, giving growth mindset feedback or growth mindset instructions, and showing that this leads to better performance. And also the students who get these interventions take more courses in the future and master them. So it's a very motivating way to think.
Well, Carol, I love it, and I don't want to put you on the spot. You don't have to answer this question, but I'm just gonna put it out there. In the future, if you are interested in doing any work around fixed mindset versus growth mindsets and how we can use that to help create positive lifestyle change in terms of our fitness and our eating habits, hopefully you know who to call, because I would be happy to help any way that I can.
That would be fantastic. I certainly would.
Carol, well, thank you so much for joining us. And folks, please, if you haven't read Carol's book, check it out. It is a wonderful way to formalize just a way of thinking and a tool set that is very, very helpful. The book is called Mindset. You can learn all about Carol, her book, all of her research at her website, which is Mindset Online. And Carol, again, thank you for joining us, and thank you for such life and world-changing research. I really appreciate it.
You're very, very welcome.
Well, listeners, I hope you enjoyed today's show as much as I did. And remember, this week and every week after, eat smarter, exercise smarter, and live better. Talk with you soon.